Well, good morning, everybody. You enjoying the show? Well, good. Well, my name is Rich Wolowski. I'm with Gordon Food Service. It is my privilege and honor to have a conversation with three really dynamic individuals. I'm proud to say that they're business partners of Gordon Food Service. These three are innovators, and they're also friends. So we're excited to have them on board. So I'm going to introduce them one-on-one. And I'd like to start by introducing Kimbal Musk. Kimbal's an entrepreneur, a restaurateur. He's the founder of the Kitchen Restaurant Group, Big Green, and also the co-founder of Square Roots, which we're going to talk about today. Please give Kimbal a round of applause.
Hey, Rich.
Thank you.
We're going to switch.
Okay, all right, good. Next, Tom Matthesen is the president of Thrive Farmers. Thrive Farmers is a nonprofit organization and also a business model that brings a direct relationship between a customer and a farmer. And so we're excited to have Tom here. Tom, would you please come up? It's going to be a tight stage today.
That's all right.
And last, we have Don Thompson here today. Don is the founder and CEO of Cleveland Avenue. And Cleveland Avenue is an accelerator that works on innovation in the food and beverage business. So Don, thank you for being here. Okay, let's start here. So maybe we could start by talking about the topic. And I know the three of you very well, and I know that this is a passion of yours, and it's about purpose and impact. The purpose of a business and how do you impact the world for the greater good. And so that's the conversation. We're going to be talking about trust. We're going to be talking about inspiration. We're going to be talking about intentionality, which I know is a big topic for you guys. Innovation, impact, and also advice. I mean, what could we give back here today from an advice perspective to the restaurant industry from your perspective? So that's the conversation, and I thought maybe we'd start from the 30,000-foot level and just really start with background. And Kimbal, I think I'll start with you here.
Okay.
But when you think about purpose and you think about your organization, tell us more about how you bring purpose and impact to your company. What does it mean to you personally?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I discovered the power of marrying purpose with my passion. I had a wonderful experience working in the software industry, but it really wasn't my passion. But it was good training, and so after I sold my company, I went to New York to study at the French Culinary Institute. And when I graduated, it was right before 9/11. And I woke up to the sounds of I was living right downtown, woke up to the sounds of the planes hitting the building, watched them fall from my window, and just ran. That was such a profound experience for me because I live so close to the World Trade Centers. They would let me cook and volunteer for the firefighters, and I saw how powerful it was to use food to bring community together. And I had this training in business that I kind of had not really allowed myself to allow my passion of food to really be a business venture for me. And after 9/11, I said, I really have to find a way to tie my passion with my purpose. So for me, tying food, which I love, bringing people together, nourishing people with real food that they trust to nourish their body, that they trust to nourish the farmer, that they trust to nourish the planet, that's real food. Okay, how do we make this into a business? How do we bring this to millions and hundreds of millions of people, eventually 10 billion people across the world? And we're working with Rich Wolowski and Gordon Foods on Square Roots, where our goal is to empower thousands of next generation farmers across the country and eventually the world growing real food in their community. And it's a real business. It's a very exciting, technology-oriented, scalable business. But it's also about trusting the food to nourish your body. It's about trusting the food to nourish the farmer. And it's about trusting the food to nourish the planet. And to do that together with Gordon Foods and Rich and Dan and Jim to really figure out how to make this a great business as well is really the end goal.
That's great, thanks. Don, what about you? Tell me about purpose, impact with your organization. What inspires you within that?
You know, I think it began, interestingly enough, with my grandmother. And Rich, you really blessed us by attending her services last year. She was a person who, I mean, you know, food was always a part of culture for us. And I enjoyed that. When I graduated from college, you know, I graduated as an electrical engineer. And then ended up going to this little bitty burger company called McDonald's. And
little bitty?
A little bitty burger
little
company.
Bitty burger?
And the reason I did was because, one, there was something that was very compelling about Ronald McDonald House Charities. It was this focus they had on people and development. And so I had a chance to really marry what I would consider a deep cultural aspect from my grandmother and others in terms of food and gathering around a table with this tremendous company that seemed to have this great passion for people and giving back. That really was the beginning. And so whether that was through looking at, you know, founding the global beef sustainability roundtable, we thought that that could change the impact of so many people. Or changing Happy Meals back in the day, which wasn't the most popular thing, but to reduce the fries and add apples. Could you change fundamentally what kids would eat, changing a default to milk? So what we began to do was to try to take a broad footprint and say, yes, we can make some changes to it. And so I think that no matter what you do, and no matter where you are in your business, you can have an impact, a broader impact on people, and thereby on social change for the better. And I mean, it is a part, and Kimbal mentioned this, and I think so well, Rich, you know, when we first met, you, Dan, Jim, when we met Mac and the board and everyone, and we began to talk about your mission, it was very aligned with what I believe, my wife Liz believed when we founded Cleveland Avenue. So for us, it's about people, and it is about impact, and we do that by supporting entrepreneurs and supporting food and beverages. And so it all kind of just comes together for me.
It's a great partnership. A lot of alignment.
Definitely.
So, Tom, same question, but maybe dig deeper on this, making an impact on people, which I know is the whole business model of Thrive, but yet unpeel that a little bit and talk about Thrive and the passion behind that.
Sure. So we're in the coffee and tea industry, and we are focused on sustainably sourcing the highest quality coffees and teas around the world. But what the business really is taking a look at a very broken, dysfunctional model, supply chain, and using the power of business and innovation and changing the supply chain in a way that elevates farmers. There are millions of farmers around the globe that are stuck in a very vicious, devastating cycle of poverty. And so our business really is focused on how do we change the supply chain in a way that changes the lives of farmers. So our model does two things. We pay our farmers a lot more, and we're able to do that because we're a direct farm relationship. We've eliminated the middlemen between farm and our customer. And then equally important, we pay them a fixed amount over long term. So they're actually a partner to the transaction, the demand that's created here in the US. And so the results are significant. And what happens is it ranges from the economics begins to change communities and lift them up in a way they couldn't do before, and really becoming mini entrepreneurs because now they're not just running a business for pure survival, but can think about what is the best methodology of running these oftentimes third, fourth, fifth generation farms. So that's really what drives our purpose every day. And I think what's unique about our company is we weren't coffee and tea people and decided to sort of try to do something good. We actually saw this gap in the marketplace, and as business people who also had a lot of experience in the nonprofit arena, and said, you know what, this is where the power of business and influence and capital can create true sustainable change in a way maybe a nonprofit or a charity really can't do. We can get there quicker, faster, and more effective. And so really the whole business was around the problem, just happened to be in coffee and tea. And I think that was because there are so many millions of farmers around the world.
Yeah, and I've had the opportunity to to go see this with you.
Yes, you have.
And I wish everybody in this room could have been there. For me personally, it was, you know, a riveting moment to see what the farmers were doing with this new business model, how they were building infrastructure, how they were putting their kids through school. Farmers talking about, you know, how their lives are better. Wives talking about how their husbands were better fathers. I mean, it was incredible to see the transformation that was happening within the community. So, very, very interesting problem that you guys are after. I want to double click on trust. And I know this is a very big topic for you, Kimbal, is trust and transparency. A big topic today in business on having more visibility into the supply chain with better understanding of where my food comes from. So,
yeah, I mean, what's one of the great things about the internet is it has shown everyone in the world how much information is readily available. And so if you're a business and you're not transparent, it actually breaks trust. So you nowadays it's absolutely a requirement, a prerequisite that you're transparent. The challenge with food and the supply chain in today's world is it's extremely complex. And if you live in Indianapolis, you might be getting fresh food, literally from Australia, and it just doesn't make any sense. So once you actually understand that transparency, you'd be like, well, wait a minute, why are they shipping me basil from Australia? Well, that happens to be the only place organic basil that grows this time of year, and so forth. And then you realize, wait a minute, that's bad for the planet. That just ain't right. And so with Square Roots, what we do, because it's grown locally, because it's grown by farmers with love, is there's literally a QR code, which is a little code on the back of the box where you can scan it with your phone, and it will tell you exactly which farmer seeded it, which one harvested it, how did they package it, when was it harvested. What's amazing about what we're doing with Gordon Foods, because we're locating Square Roots right on the distribution center, is it'll be harvested in the morning. And so Square Roots is an indoor farm, and so we can actually make daytime at night. So at the end of the day, which is actually morning for us, we harvest the basil, and it's in your restaurant or in your grocery store by lunchtime. And the transparency timeline enables you to know exactly when it was harvested, exactly who harvested it, where was it harvested from. And so we're now entering a new world where transparency is not only needed, but it's a massive advantage, and of course a wonderful connection that you guys can bring to your customer.
So this is what you're talking about here.
Yeah, exactly.
So this actually was packaged yesterday in Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
So this literally is the first production.
Yes, this is we just built the farm in partnership with Gordon Foods at their headquarters. Beautiful basil. Rich challenged us 6 months ago. We hadn't even, I don't even think we had permits 6 months ago.
We did not.
We did not, we had nothing. And
nor did we have a budget.
Nor did we have a budget. We had a piece of grass, and we said, there's going to be a farm here. And he said, you know, there's this food show in October. I need to make sure that we have our basil by October 1st. And this is very special basil. We replicate the climate of Genoa, Italy. So because we are in climate containers, you might see a picture of what these containers look like. We can absolutely control the humidity, the oxygen, carbon dioxide. And Genoa, Italy is where the best basil in the world is grown. And so we looked at that area, and then we spoke to the chefs in that community. And in 1997, they had the best season that they'd ever experienced. And so we then looked at that year. What time did the sun come up? What time did the sun set? What days did it rain? What was the humidity levels? What was the carbon dioxide levels? What was the oxygen content? And we're able to perfectly replicate the summer of 1997 in Genoa, Italy, inside our containers in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And Rich challenged us to do this in time for the food show. And I'm really glad to say
We did it.
that the Square Roots team did it.
All right, so my boss is here right now. You can see him over there. So the first harvest is going to be November 4th.
Yep.
Right? So we need our customers here today to say that they're going to buy it. Who's going to buy basil?
Woohoo! Woo. We've got 9 farmers that are farming their heart out, and we have 2 of them are teachers that want to get into farming. We have about, I think, 5 from the Grand Rapids area and another 4 that have come in from around the country. We have a software engineer from Texas that has moved here and wants to get into food and farming. With so much passion is going into the product we're growing. We're growing basil, mint, and chives. We'll grow the SKUs over time. But honestly, give it a try. You'll find it's the best basil you've ever tasted. And it's beautifully designed so that it's more about the leaf and less about the stem. I mean, everything we do with the basil is to make sure you guys are super happy and your customers absolutely love it, and they trust the food, they trust the love that's gone into it.
Whew. I'm glad we're going to have some orders on November 4th. Okay, you 2 guys, Don and Tom. A few months ago, you and I, we sat down in Chicago. You remember that?
Yes.
And we had a conversation that I will never forget. We were talking about your product, and we were talking about social justice. And Don, I want to start with you because he had us both just spinning, didn't he? Yep. Talking about social justice and purpose and impact around, buying a product and taking it to the consumer and the story behind that. So maybe you could start with that. Let's relive that moment. Although we were eating lunch too.
Yeah, we were having lunch. It was really great too. I think for everyone that's here, how many folks are restaurateurs? I think one of the things that's very understated is most people don't realize the lives that you impact. It's not the food or the beverages that you serve. It's the lives that you impact. And all of those jobs, I mean, you all know there's a lot of people who come in who may come in as dishwashers in your organizations. And there's something special about them. And you give them an opportunity, and they take the opportunity, and next thing you know, they're managing one of your businesses or restaurants. And so part of our conversation really was that same kind of notion of what is it that you actually serve? And we began to have this conversation with Tom, and he mentioned in his opening comments, it's not just the food. Anyone can serve food. Anyone can serve a beverage, but when you serve up life experiences and you change people's lives and customers' experience, that's what food and beverages are all about. And so I found it so impactful that what you were doing with Thrive, particularly in Guatemala, was to changing not just individual lives, but communities. And as a result of that, when you think about that ecosystem, and today I saw the video, the virtual reality experience on Thrive. For those who haven't seen it, you should see it. Because it'll give you a feeling that I think is the feeling of what it means to really be engaged in the experience business, and we happen to serve foods and beverages. And it's an imbalance, is the way I described it, experience. Everything was imbalanced. Support of the farmers, who supported the economy, which then supported the schools, which supported kids' education, which continued to be this loop that was really imbalanced. It was agriculturally and socially friendly to the environment. It was positive to the economy, and lives were being changed. And so for me, that is the business that we're in. And everything that we've attempted to do and what we talked about that day, relative to when you talk about who you are, I hope you don't introduce yourself as, I'm so-and-so and I've got the restaurant at X. Because what you really are is you're so-and-so and I change lives just down the road. And that to me is our calling. And that's the positive side of what we do in the food and beverage industry, I think.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Tom, your takeaway from that conversation?
Well, I think for us, it was inspiring just to engage in the dialogue. And I think as our entire business model really is addressing a major social injustice at its core. And we're not the first people that found out that injustice existed, by the way. We just happened to be crazy enough to go after it and try to create a business solution around that. So I think, and it really comes back to trust and transparency. We're really elevating the story. Do you really actually know what happens at the other end where does that coffee come from? There's actually people at the other end of that. There's communities at the other end of that. And I think when we are able to bring our restaurant customers and their customers into that experience, it creates this amazing opportunity. It's knowledge, but then knowledge creates the actual change that can take place. And really, our model, we're not even asking the customer to pay for that. It's really just in changing a lot of the supply chain dynamics in a way where we're allowing the farmer to win. It's actually fairly simple, complex in getting there. And then back to community development, from our very beginning, we knew the economics was going to have a big impact on community, but sometimes that can also be dangerous. So that we wanted to make sure that we wanted to embrace our communities that we partner with in a way that we address all the community development issues. So we started a nonprofit. So Thrive is a for-profit. We established a nonprofit over 4 years ago to come back into these communities and address all of the many symptoms of severe poverty. It can be education, healthcare, sanitation. And so we wanted to come back in, and we focus on training up leaders who will then own the agenda in these communities and then support them with resources. So it's from kids' camps to water supply, sanitation, education, financial planning. We want to make sure that these community leaders, that's our definition of sustainability, change the economics, but then create something in place that can live beyond us in this generation. And that to me is what when they look back 5, 10 years from now, we'll be able to see those communities flourishing in a way that couldn't be done by just a pure charity handout, things like that. And along the side that, the real beauty, and I'll be quiet, is what we see happen in the people. This restoration of dignity, you and I talked about that a good bit. That changes everything, because once you believe you can do it, then all things are possible. And before, when you're just trying to struggle to put food on the table, that's not your mindset. But then when you believe you can do it, then the power, then it becomes exponential. And that's our hope for where we're going.
Rich, I think there's also sometimes a misnomer about who's responsible. And this is always an interesting one. So when I was CEO of McDonald's, we had about 1.8 million people, employees, and we had a lot of suppliers, partners. You serve 70 million customers a day. So it's easy to say, so McDonald's, you're responsible for changing those lives. So today, here I sit at Cleveland Avenue, we got a restaurant downstairs, and we have ownership in a few restaurant brands and some foods like Beyond Meat and others and things. And you look at it, and you realize that it goes back to a basic fundamental. It doesn't matter if you've got 30,000 restaurants or if you've got one. Yes, the answer is yes, we are responsible. And we're responsible not just for the employees, quote unquote, who are really your partners, but for that community around that restaurant and what we do to give back. And Tom's right, when you're looking at a P&L and it's hard to pay bills that month, there's other ways you change lives, and that's the providing of jobs. When it gets big enough, broad enough, don't forget that broader community. So you can't do it all at once, but the answer is yes, it is us. And I think that that's the other thing that many of you give back and that many of us are trying to do in what we do. Kimball's point, we're trying to give back and help others to give forward and pay it forward just because somebody gave it to us.
Right.
It's not like we were the start of giving. So I think
what we found with farmers is they want to be part of the community too. They want to produce a consistently great product. Like, that's for sure. I'm sure your coffee farmers are very proud of what they're producing, and they might need some guidance on how to create that consistently great product. But that's what they want to do, and they want to be part of the community. With our restaurant, we started the kitchen in Colorado in 2004. We were the first. Before the term farm to table existed, we were one of the first restaurants to work with local farms almost exclusively. We didn't have distribution partners, and we were thinking to ourselves, we were wondering, was this going to work? The food was not going to be consistent, but we would just figure it out. They'd bring it in at 4 p.m, and we'd kind of look at that and go, I think we could make a meal out of that. And we had some wonderfully talented chefs. But what was amazing was how much the community appreciated it. They came in droves to connect with their farmers. The farmers came to our restaurants to connect with the customer and to walk tables and tell them how they grew this really strange-looking carrot or this new vegetable that grows really well in Colorado but they'd never heard of before. Sometimes the farmers would come in with a different kind of a hog, which was very fatty, and customers aren't used to that. They're used to a big piece of meat when they get a pork chop, and this was a very fatty piece of meat. And the farmer would walk the table and explain that this is the type of breed that really thrives in Colorado. And if you taste it, it's delicious. It's a little, maybe not, you shouldn't have it all the time, but it's absolutely delicious. And it was that sort of unique quality that got the farmers really connected into the community. And now we're starting to do that around the country with our restaurants. But what I found with the farmers was there were so many young farmers young people that wanted to be farmers. Do we have any of the Square Roots farmers in here? Okay, they're out working the booth right now. So so many young people that are saying, I really want to farm food. I really want to do it, not because it's a business. There are many ways to make money. Of course, you need to make money as a farmer, but that's not their reason. They want to connect to their community. They want to understand how food can bring people together. And what we're doing at Square Roots is enabling 18 to 22-year-olds, young people, to embrace farming as a business, and through farming connect to their community, through your restaurants connect to the people that love their food. And that's what gets them up in the morning. That's what gets them excited. We have 9 farmers in Grand Rapids. I think we had over 200 applications for those 9 positions. Young people really want to farm. They really want to connect to the community. Just like Don said, it's about connecting into their community that they love. So I can't echo that enough.
Kimbal, now I know why that pork chop tasted so good.
Yeah, right, exactly. I'm trying to remember the name of the breed. It's a famous breed.
Oh.
They use it for lardo in Italy, and it's a well-known type of breed. But in America, it's not common. But yes, it is absolutely delicious.
And I can't eat it every day.
You cannot eat it every day.
It was good. It was good. Okay, I'm going to go in a few different directions here, but I want to talk about intentionality. See this guy smiling over here, but Kimbal, I think I want to start with you. So we've had discussions about how you got to be intentional about purpose and impact, and the small things can sometimes be big things. And you started with your restaurant, and then you moved into these learning gardens, and you started with, you just took one step, and then you took the next step. And I want you to talk about just starting small and then it gaining momentum, and where's it at today. But these learning gardens are
really
an
wonderful.
amazing way that you're impacting the communities. Talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. So Big Green is a nonprofit. When we opened the kitchen in 2004, we did see ourselves as a member of the community, and we wanted to give back. And we started to work with schools. One of our employees, one of our team members said, we grew up in a school garden environment. His dad was a school garden creator in New Zealand, and said, hey, could we do this in Boulder? And we said, that would be a good use of a way to kind of connect into the community, good use of our philanthropic dollar. And what happened was he started building a school garden, traditional school garden, twice a year in a different school. And it was hard to do. It was a challenging thing to do, but that wasn't so much the challenge. For me, it was the more we did it, the more we realized how many kids needed this. And then you realize, wait a minute, we're only doing 2 a year. And like, wait a minute, something's got to be fixed here, because if we did 2 a year, I live in a relatively small county in Colorado, we would not finish our county before I'm dead. And I was like, wait, we got to find a better way to do this. And we worked hard on an idea called the Learning Garden, which is, as you can see, a beautiful outdoor classroom. it's really turned the idea of a school garden on its head. Traditional gardens are in the corner of the schoolyard. They're made out of wood or maybe at grade. There are fences around them, and they're usually become an eyesore in the backyard because it's kind of hard for teachers to use. They're hard to maintain. And we said, and by the way, very expensive, because every time they would get, every year they would get harder and harder and more expensive to clean up and organize. And we said, turn this on its head and do the investment up front, and then the ongoing cost is very low. And so what we do is these beautiful outdoor environments, ADA accessible, and they're beds that are raised up. They're made out of recyclable polyethylene. They will last longer than the bricks in the wall of those schools, and the walls of those schools. And and the irrigation is built in, so there isn't a daily maintenance that's needed. There is very little maintenance that's needed over the years. Of course, you bring in new soil and you do clean it up a little, but our team does most of that work in partnership with school districts. And so we did one in 2011 to see whether or not this would resonate. We got the governor, he was the mayor and then became the governor of Colorado, John Hickenlooper. He came out, he was very curious to see if this was something that could work. He got really excited and helped us build. We built 30 in Denver right away, and that got the attention of Mayor Emanuel in Chicago, and he challenged us to build 100 in Chicago in 1 year, 1 calendar year. You got to appreciate, the best nonprofit in the country was the one that our team member was running, and it was building 2 a year. And all of a sudden, the mayor of Chicago is like, if you don't do 100, I'm not even interested, because I've got 600 schools, and if you can't do 100 in 1 year, then I got to find someone else to do this. If anyone knows the mayor, you don't say no to that stuff. And he challenged us to do it, and we did. We built 100 learning gardens in Chicago in 2013. An extraordinary effort by the Big Green team. And today we are now up to 600 schools. We're in partnership with Gordon Foods in Detroit. Over 50 schools now in Detroit. And we reach across the country 350,000 kids every school day. They learn their math, science, history, English in the learning garden, and connect to their friends through food. Their parents come in and teach in the garden. Don and I were talking about this briefly, but the Hispanics or the African Americans, they kind of feel like they might have left that behind. They don't want to do gardening. You know what we found? They actually love it. And they want to come into the school, especially the Hispanic community. They have a language barrier because the parents often don't speak English. So they come in and they don't have to worry about being a perfect English speaker. They can help out in the garden. And sometimes they're not trained in science and math. But guess what? In the learning garden, you just need to be there as an adult helper, and you can really be part of it. So we get a 1 in 7 parental participation in our schools in some of the lowest income communities in the country. 1 in 7 parental participation when these parents hold 2 jobs and they're just trying to make ends meet, and they still find time to come into the school, and they do it through the learning garden. So one step at a time, we keep working on it, and we're changing these kids' lives every day.
Huge impact, and we're so proud to be part of it as well.
Thank you.
Don, so intentionality, that was another part of our dinner conversation that we had. Mm-hmm. What's that mean to you?
I think whatever you do, you have to be quite explicit in what you're going after. And again, you may not get there in a year or 2 years, but you have to be very, very focused on that and have a vision of what that success looks like. So, in our case, similar, I'm sure, to Tom and the Kimbals, when Liz and I started Cleveland Avenue, when I left McDonald's, I wanted to be able to do something that I thought was going to be able to advance entrepreneurs. Because one of the things that can help a community thrive is to be able to have entrepreneurs that are able to build communities through their businesses. And so when we started Cleveland Avenue, we started with the notion that, what if we could do something similar to what happened with Chipotle? And McDonald's made a large investment with Steve Ailes. It had 9 restaurants, and the rest is kind of history. A lot of things happened. But behind the scenes, there were certain things that got done. So one was that there was a supply chain wrapped around them initially. 2 was there was financial expertise, real estate, construction expertise to build more restaurants. So at Cleveland Avenue, what we've tried to do is put in place a foundational aspect that when entrepreneurs come in, they're coming into an extended family. So we can help them with operations, with financial performance, with marketing, with brand concepting, with brand positioning, with how you run a business. We can do those things. And at the same time, it is not, oftentimes we will talk with them many, many times before we make an investment. They'll be in the facility a ton of times doing things with the mixologists or the chefs or the menu curators before there's an investment made. And the reason is because with that kind of expertise that we're blessed with at Cleveland Avenue, we have to be very intentional that our first bet is on these entrepreneurs and the fact that they're going to do great things. The second one, if there's a business arrangement there, that's great. And so we've been very intentional about that support network, ergo the facility and all the crazy things we do in what I call Willy Wonka's Wakanda. We do a bunch of crazy stuff with food and beverages, but it's because our entrepreneurs are driving it. And so for us, we're very intentional there. We're also very intentional about our community support. And so my wife Liz runs the Cleveland Avenue Foundation for Education. There's a lot of kids in Chicago on the south and west sides that are absolutely brilliant. There's a lot of kids on the south and west sides that never leave their communities. There's a lot of kids in those same neighborhoods that don't realize how great they are, how much they're blessed. And sometimes it just takes one of us to put our arm around them, give them a little nod, and just say, walk this way with me. All I can do, I'm gonna get you to the door. We're gonna get to the door together, and then we're gonna open that door. And then I want you to just run through that baby and just set the world on fire. Just do all the things that you're blessed to be able to do. And so when we see these kids from 3rd grade all the way up to graduating from college, start to get exposure and opportunity, start to visit museums. Sounds big, doesn't sound big to us? Out of that community into a different place. Visit a college campus for the first time and realize, you know what, I actually could go here, couldn't I? Yes, you could. Understand that there's a work path that has to be fulfilled. Here's how to take a test. Here's how to be comfortable presenting yourself. When they understand those things, and then they start thinking about, we'll put 3rd graders in a Shark Tank, like the TV Shark Tank thing, and tell them, present your products. And you see these lights go off and you realize that's intentionality. We're intentionally building not just entrepreneurial success, we're trying to build up people to have the right kind of innards inside and believe in themselves enough that they know they can change the world. And I think no matter what we do, the answer is yes, and we have to be intentional, whether it's on the what many would call the philanthropic side, we just call it responsibility, or what we do in the business with the entrepreneurs. And if you do it and do it with, I think, the right vision, intentions, and the right measures, money can be made. Money can be made. But at the end of the day, if that's all that happened, that'd be a pretty miserable life.
Absolutely.
And I think when you can help change people, enable them to do that same thing, and they'll give back and others give back, that's the gist of it all. So I think that whole notion is basically what you had on the slide, Rich. It is about purpose, it is about intention, and it's about having a vision for how those things will come together.
Thank you for sharing. Tom.
Yeah.
And you got to talk about the ThriveWorks a little bit more, because that is a big part of intentionality within your business model.
Yeah, I think for us, right out of the gate, it was a mindset that we had to have to do something different. And so we like to think that every business decision that we do make has an impact on our farmer partner. And it's a different way of thinking. And then the second part of that is, how are we going to measure success? So we've got key metrics that we've got to measure and follow outside of just profit and loss. And that's going to be community, that's going to be the ThriveWorks was really why we wanted to bring that into the mix. Is we had a group of kids in one community, they had no sanitation service, and so they'd attended some of our leadership training. These kids got together, they created an entire solution around something as basic as sanitation. They did that. They thought that because they believed that they could, and then it's now grown to other areas within that community. So that's an example, exactly what you're talking about.
Empowerment.
It's really, and so I think we like to think we wake up with just a different mindset. How are we going to keep score? Because you know what? If the best we do is deliver a great bottom line, that's just not enough. And I think the exciting thing now is, we've got restaurants in the room. I mean, there's a great opportunity in this, and you talked about it really well, about how the community embraced you. I think it's awesome, right? And I think we're now entering in a time, by the way, where you can have a lot more courage than what we see universally and take some risk, and you can bring some of these stories and this engagement, transparency into your customer and let that be your brand identity. There's decisions being made by your customers. They want to know that where they're going is true to social impact as well. So we talk about momentum. So we're blessed to have Chick-fil-A partner with us early in our world. So 6 years we've served every Chick-fil-A in the country. That's created momentum. Gordon Food has taken that momentum and escalated that. And it starts to just begin to take you, whether it's in a nonprofit. We ended up doing 2 years of kids camps. That was never on the whiteboard. That was never on the first plan. But we served 3,500 kids in kids camps, and some of our farmers served as volunteers in that. So it begins to start paying it forward in ways you just don't see. Now we're in the tea business, so now you start thinking about, wow, now we're talking about communities in rural China, we're talking about India, we're talking about Taiwan, the complexity of that and the needs. But when we go there, we find out it's all the same. It's the same people with the same need and the same seeking of opportunity, that by simply engaging into a business transaction in a way that's uplifting and of justice, so many things can happen. So.
Yeah, I mean, what we do with farmers is, these larger factory farms, indoor farms or outdoor, but the labor is really, they're treated pretty poorly, and what our goal with our farmers is for them to absolutely love what they do, because when they put love into it, as you guys do with your coffee, that's when the flavor comes out. That's when you can really your customer's eyes come alive with what the difference is. It's that love that goes into the product. And that comes from creating a business model where it is sustainable, where the farmers are making enough money. I saw the VR, and you guys have to see the VR for Thrive, where they were rebuilt a school, or they cleaned it up and they made it a first-class school through the profits from the coffee farms. That's kind of what we mean by sustainability. It's of course about the planet, of course about the soil, but it's also about the livelihoods of these farmers, creating a product that is delicious and is sustainable for their families. You guys have to go to the tour at Square Roots, and you'll see, I think there's a first tour is 1 p.m. today. I think there's another one later, but try and make your time to go there, and you'll see that a farmer takes on a farm. These are climate farms that one farmer will run, and they make a good living they do it for 1 year, but they have to make a good living. This is part of the business model, right? So once they do that, then they can really pour love into it, and they can make a difference in their community as well.
Well said.
So a year ago, you and I sat up here, and I said, maybe we should build a farm. Remember that?
Yeah.
You said, yeah, let's do it. So we did. And
one thing I've learned about Rich and the Gordon Foods culture is he does what he says, and he says what he does. I was like, okay, let's see if this is going to happen. And then I love it. He challenged the Square Roots team, Tobias and the team. Can you get it done by the food show?
Well, we had to for our customers.
That's right, exactly.
Okay, so let's get this on record.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
We're doing coffee.
Yes.
And what about some other products? Are these issues broader than just coffee and tea? And what are we going to be doing next? I'm getting them on record.
Yeah.
Okay, putting it down right here. As you might guess, and that's a great question, thank you, many agricultural products, farmers around the world, it's the same dynamic. You have, again, that imbalance that you talk about from farm. You have often 3-4 buy-sell transactions between a farm and the end user, and not all of that is meaningful, obviously, to the farmer. The farmer's been the easy one to suppress and make them. And by the way, the farmer takes most of the risk in these transactions as well. So we're going to be beginning to pull back the veil on a number of different products that have the same supply chain dynamic that we believe we can disintermediate in a way through our partnership with Gordon Food, that we can deliver the highest quality. I think quality is still a big part of this. This is more than a story. We got to be great at what we do and be innovative in helping our customers grow their sales. But there's going to be the category of spices, to grains. There's quinoa and chia seeds, and we're talking about nuts, macadamia nuts. I know it's near and dear to your heart.
Wow. The best macadamia nut I've ever tasted.
We have some today. So we have a big vision for really pulling this apart in a way that's going to uplift farmers around the world. And having a partner like Gordon Food, that's the distribution. Because if you can't create the demand here, you can't do anything else. Anybody can source or do or say, but you have to have a customer, and you got to have demand, and you got to have talent and innovation that show our customers how we're going to put that out there with their customers and enhance their brand experience. So we're excited.
And we're on record too.
We're on record, which is beautiful, beautiful. So we have a business plan coming your way. We'll talk about the next ones. Next year when we're up here, we're going to be talking about the ones we did, not what we're going to go do.
That's right. Well, we're excited about the partnership. So I've got one more question. Is that okay? One more question? And then we want to get to some questions on social media and then open it up for a few questions from the audience. I think the last question should be from the three of you. What advice would you give people in the room today? What's a takeaway for them as they go back and after the show, they go back to their businesses? Don, start with you.
You know, I guess the first thing I say is don't underestimate your impact. I've been blessed to see a lot of folks who own businesses over the years, I guess over the last 30 years. A lot of different franchisees of different brands. McDonald's for about 25, and in the last 5 years or so, a lot of franchisees and a lot of different brands. A lot of people who own their own restaurants. A lot of entrepreneurs who are bringing innovative new products to the marketplace that do all kind of crazy things, taste all kind of way, and hybridize potatoes and equipment that makes its own little beverage with a little pod, and it's an alcoholic beverage, or new fruits and appeal, and there's a lot of different things. The one thing that I think it's so easy to do is to get to that point where you're so focused on building that business, growing that business, getting to that bottom line, making things work, that even once you get to that point, you don't always step back and look around and go, we've done some pretty cool things for people as well. This community looks a little bit different. You know, the folks that have worked with me, for us, with us, we've helped change their lives. Don't forget those moments when they come back to you and say, thanks so much for what? You know, I got my first house yesterday. I signed on the dotted line, and that was all made possible by you. Don't underestimate that impact, because I think when you don't underestimate the impact and you leverage it and move forward with it, it almost propels you to go even harder into the next chapter. When you underestimate it, it's kind of about that box. But this is not about the box. When you really look at what you all have done and what you probably will do, God willing, what you'll be able to do is to leverage all the things and the changes that you've made with other people, and that thing begins to spin forward. So that would be one of the two things. The other one, I would say have fun. One thing is, man, foods and beverages are supposed to be about fun, excitement, engagement. That's the way it starts at the dinner table. For families at the dinner table, it's always stories. There's food being passed. There's beverages being passed. It's fun. Make it about fun. Even in the craziest of times, make it about fun. And don't forget to inject that in there too. If you can do those couple of things, you know what? And make a penny or two here or there to be able to buy some beans or a McDonald's hamburger, or for that matter, a piece of pizza. I guess we got a little bit of that going on now too. Maybe a Beyond Burger. No, it's not bad. It's pretty good, actually.
Now you're promoting. Now you're promoting.
This is shameless promotion. But make sure that you have fun along the way. And if you can do that, that's it. That's it.
Tom.
Two pieces of advice. One is start asking better questions about who your suppliers are and what they do and how they do it, and make sure that's in sync with who you are as a brand. And the second part of that is there's some really innovative companies we've talked a lot about up here today. You can leverage their experience to help you. So you don't have to always do that yourself, but whether it's coffee or whatever it is, let some really creative vendors help you elevate what you're trying to be and what you think's relevant to your community. And I think the last thing I would say is, have the courage, again, going back to your community development, how you embrace, you're looking at this crazy business model, to have the courage to believe that you'll be rewarded for bringing something good into that community. Don't let price always be the guide, but quality, innovation, story. Have the courage that your customers will reward you for that, and there's never been a better time than now to do that. I think it'll be a bare minimum, hopefully, going forward, but great opportunity out there to really differentiate on that point.
Thank you, Tom. Kimbal.
Well, the lesson I've learned with businesses, you always have to make sure the business model works, the business has a positive bottom line, but I get really bored after that. So for me, what I've always found is you just pour love into what you're doing. You pour love into the food you're making. You pour love into the team members that are helping it all be possible. You pour love into your customers, and you pour love into your suppliers. You get to know your farmers and your suppliers, and that sort of virtuous cycle of love comes through, and your customers will start. You will start growing. You'll get more customers through the door because that's what they want. They want to connect. They want that's that emotional connection. They want to sit down at your table in your restaurant and connect to their community through the food. They want to connect to their farmers. They want to connect to your waiter. They want to connect to your chef. And it's this beautiful feeling of love that comes through that it's what gets me up in the morning, keeps me going, and oftentimes when I get into a business that it's just about the bottom line, after a while I'm just like, well, okay, kind of done now. Let's find something else to do, and so I always come back to the love by putting into the product and do what you love and the money will come. So I mean, it's an old phrase, but what I found is just pour love into it and things tend to work out just great.
Love, love, love.
Yep.
Love it. Okay, so I've got a couple questions from social media, and then we'll fill in a few questions from the audience. Two really good questions. First one is, how can customers tell the difference between companies doing actual good versus those saying they are? Good question. So it's doing or marketing.
I mean, I think that's where transparency comes in. If you try and pull yourself up by your shoelaces by saying it but not doing it, you're going to get fleeced in the world of social media where people can find out the truth. So you're really playing with fire if you're using it just as a marketing tool. You really need to be doing walking the walk, and it's been great to actually. I mean, I'll use Gordon Foods as an example. The more I dig in with Gordon Foods, the more they walk the walk. And it's amazing to be partners. Dan and Jim drive that vision, and Rich makes it happen. But people will find out. So I think that there are obviously many people that'll try for a little while to just do it as a marketing tool. In today's world, that does not cut it for very long.
Rich, I think part of it, I'd call it investments, not donations. There's a lot of events and things and sponsorships you'll see corporations, and it's important because many of these things need sponsorships. But if it ends at that level, that's a donation. An investment is something that continues. So when you see companies that will make investments into businesses, into communities, you'll know it because it's not about a one-time event. You'll hear other things, you'll see other things. And to the point that Kimbal made, especially today, social media will carry this forward. I will say good, bad, and ugly. So you got to have some diligence about it to understand the truth and keep digging at it. But if you continue to see that, and the company's not just out there bragging about it all the time, but they're actually doing things and they're making investments, you'll know it. When we first met, the thing that impressed me so much was the notion that you, the leadership team, and the board were opening up Relish Works, which is where you incubate and support entrepreneurs. But you weren't just saying you were going to do it. You all made several visits in. I got a chance to meet you guys and realize this was not just talk, and it wasn't just a check. It was an investment. I mean, you and that board travel more places than most boards travel. And the fact of seeing it, that was an investment. That wasn't a donation. You didn't show up once with a lot of rah-rah hoopla, and then, a big announcement came out, and that's the last everybody heard about it. You guys have continued to hit this, and even with us sitting up here in the various roles and companies that we have and touch and the things we see, we can all attest to that. So I think it is about investments, and watch the investments and look at the diligence around those, not just the donation of what name you see on the sponsorship line.
Great advice.
No, it's true.
Tom, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, and it's a challenge in this day because the word sustainability has become whitewashed, or corporate social responsibility. What does that even mean? I mean, it would be defined by 10 different people, 10 different ways. So for us, the best we can do, and it's been incredibly effective, is we have our partners come see it for themselves. And that's back to the investment.
Yeah.
Rich has come down, he's seen it. So now when we've been taking groups of teams down, salespeople, marketing people, they experience it. Now they're interfacing with a customer. They can say, I've been there. Chick-fil-A's had over 300 of their executives come down and experience. So now they're able to talk to their customers, and that's the kind of social media viral spread we want to talk about, because that's people that have actually seen it. And listen, we keep score. We track every community, every season, and we track the market differential between what we pay and what their best alternative would be. So at any given time, I can tell you that, and our farmers, by the way, they earn about 3.5 times more net income with us than their next best alternative, assuming they had one, or assuming they had the capital to even have a chance to have one. It's significant, right? So we know we've got to do that, and we've got to measure that, and we want to show. And by the way, our large customers, we show the margin. This is what the farmer gets. This is what we get. This is what you get. Everybody should know. Now that's true transparency, but nothing beats the anecdotal experience of being there, sitting at a kitchen table and asking somebody, well, what does this mean for you? What does this mean for your family? So,
yeah, that's a good example, because you and I met each other at a think tank conference 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's right when you were starting out. And Tom's telling me about this model. I'm like, man, that sounds so interesting. But I said, I got to go see it. And when I went and saw it, it was game over. I mean, I was like, we got to be part of this. We got to bring this to market for our customers. So couldn't agree with you more. Okay, one more question. Okay, so this one's a good one. What is the role of business today in combating climate change? And I'm going to start with you, Kimbal, on that one.
Cool, thank you. Well, I'm a big believer in we all have to be part of the solution. I'll probably use square roots as a good example, because it's a very interesting new technology where you're growing food indoors, but you're taking energy. You could use solar panels, but it comes from the grid, and you're converting it into light and then growing food with it, which can be quite energy intensive, which means you're pulling coal out of the ground or oil out of the ground. Thankfully, in Michigan, we actually work on a wind farm, so we're good here. But in Brooklyn, we do work off the grid. And every other part of our business is very, very, very good for climate change. We use 10 times less water. The food is not shipped any further than a few miles in Brooklyn, and here maybe an hour or two. So generally we were good, but we had to solve this energy problem so that we could be authentic and really talk to our customers and say this is really good for the climate as well. And in Brooklyn, we spoke to the utility there, and they told us something very interesting, which is the coal plants or the nuclear plants that are operating there have to run at full volume even through the night. So even though the city of New York doesn't use that much energy at night, they can't just lower the volume of the plant. So they are actually producing excess energy and putting that energy into the ground because they have nowhere to put it. And so we asked them, well, what if we put operated our farms at night? So our daytime is actually at nighttime. And they said, well, that would be great. So we're actually using, we're absolutely carbon neutral in Brooklyn because we operate at night. But they also gave us a price break. And they said, well, if you do that, we'll even charge you half the price for electricity because we have so much excess electricity. And it was really that sort of exploration in constantly being curious, how could we be a better member of the community? How can we be a positive part of helping, a part of the solution for climate change? When we heard about the wind farm here, we're like, this is fantastic. But we've also learned that there's ways you can work with the system to really be a positive part of the climate solution.
But you guys?
You know, I think there's a lot of ways. The larger the business is, so, you know, in this continuum, on the large scale of businesses, there's so many different things you can look at. And so you almost have to do a triage to see where the biggest impact is. So in a historical case of a place I used to be at, one of the things that we saw was there were a few areas of critical impact. One of those areas was around how we might impact carbon footprint. And one of the largest drivers is clearly animal production. And animal production and food is a big part of who we were at McDonald's. And so one of the things we did was say, wow, how can we impact the footprint in terms of reduction? And we focused on the beef side. And it was really not to bemoan beef because, you know, you've got two different extremes. You got people out there that would say, well, if you didn't have any beef, you won't have that footprint. I don't agree with that one. I don't think that's the right approach. I think what we want to do is look at whether they be countries like Ireland and the way they look at sustainability relative to water reclamation and farming, or you look at getting the folks around the table. We started the Beef Sustainability Roundtable to get people around the table to think about what are all the various areas that you're able to impact. And at the same time, you can't put an unfair and undue burden on farmers right off the bat. So you've got to have a migration path. It's one thing to say make changes. It's another to plan out, map out how those changes will be sustainable changes. And so we pulled people from all walks of life, whether they were farmers, whether they were food processors, and from feedlots, whether they were those retailers, whether they were NGO groups. You've got to pull all those folks together. So I think that what businesses can do, and the larger the business, you can bring people together to look at solutions, and then you can enact those solutions. I think the same thing goes, there's a lot of work being done by some of the beverage companies right now in terms of water reclamation and in terms of sustainability and safe water in continents like Africa and others around the world. And so if you're a large company, you can convene people, you can make a major statement. If there was anything we ever did at McDonald's, it rippled through the rest of the world. And it rippled through supply chain, good, bad, and ugly. So there was a responsibility to represent all sides of that equation, but at the same time, have a definition of where you can move forward. So large companies can do that. Smaller companies, I think, can impact the same way by, one, understanding where I have opportunity. Kimbal made the point earlier of understanding where the transparency and provenance around your food and where it comes from. Understand that and support those efforts that really are supporting very specific things. It might be energy reduction. It might be provenance and transparency. It might be the way that they're treating workers and supporting workers. It might be the fact that these are folks who give back into the community in terms of supporting education. Whatever that is, you can look at those things. So all of us have a piece that we can play in broader sustainability. So business, whether it's on the smaller business end or larger business end, convening or engagement and asking the right questions, I think, you know, up that continuum, all those folks can support it.
Yeah.
Good, Tom.
I'll echo that all. I think, again, innovative businesses will create the solutions. The power of business capital, and influence, as you stated, is pulling people together. Those are the solutions. I mean, at the end of the day, the answer is yes. I believe we're to be, good stewards of the assets we're entrusted with, and that includes the environment.
My kids are actually in the audience today. Luca and August, thanks for coming.
I think we should bring them up here. Look at them.
Well, if we didn't look after our climate, then my kids would have a pretty dismal future. So I think we owe it to the next generation to be responsible members of the world.
Yeah, it's an important topic. I know it's at Gordon Food Service. We publish a stewardship report once a year, and we use a lot of energy too. And so we're always trying to find ways to reduce energy, carbon footprint, visibility, sustainability, recycle water, et cetera. So
and your customer wants to hear that.
Absolutely.
So it's also a good business tool as long as you're really doing it. Like as we said, it's not to one of the earlier questions, it's not a marketing exercise. You need to do it, but also then you can share it with your customer and they will appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not to demonize, and I think that's the one thing. It's not this is bad and this is good.
Right.
This is a continuum, and how you're able to find opportunities along that is through the appropriate way to talk with each other, collaborate with each other, and figure out what it is you're really going after. But I think I hope we're past the days of good, bad, because customers also want choice.
Right.
And so as long as we can remember those things, we'll come up with those innovative solutions and see people coming up with those that we can support.
Well, listen, we are running out of time here. The three gentlemen up here will be on the floor answering any questions that you might have from a follow-up perspective. I'd like to close with a couple things here. Number one, I'm so thankful that I met the three of you. You've been an inspiration to me, and you've challenged me in many different ways. I could not think of three better business partners as we think about the future and as we lean into new topics at Gordon Food Service. The second thing is I just feel so blessed to be in this industry, to be with our customers today, and also work for a company that believes and walks the life of impact. The family and the company believes on making the world a better place day in, day out, in how we serve our customers and also how we take care of our people and our communities. And that's what makes this alignment so good with the three of you guys. So I'd like to give the three here a round of applause for a great conversation. If you have a chance, you have to see this virtual reality.
So cool.
It's right across from the registration booth. You will go inside a farm and you will see the farmer and be in the farming field and hear about the impact and purpose within Thrive. But have a great show, and thank you for being here.